In American society, money is a taboo topic. We're taught at a young age it's improper to talk about it, but we're also bombarded with messages about the power and importance of money in our everyday lives. And by not talking about it, we miss out on the skills and lessons we need to effectively understand and financially plan. That changes today. Welcome to Money Tales. Hosted by Sandy Brager and Cami Doder, Money Tales brings more than 35 years of combined professional experience in personal finance to demystify money and demonstrate what it's like to speak openly about personal financial matters. Join us each episode as they interview modern-day movers and shakers about how money decisions intertwine with their daily lives in order to give you better insight into productive financial conversations. Subscribe today and register for our blog Fathom at aspiriant.com/podcasts to increase your money mojo. And now, here's Cami and Sandy.
What happens when parents tell their two children they can afford to send only one of them to college, so they're not going to send either? Our guest, Gregory Roll, shares how this pivotal family moment became a guiding lesson for his future money conversations and decisions, especially navigating money conversations with his own family. This milestone 250th episode of Money Tales is all about fairness and family dynamics. Let me tell you more about Greg. He's a passionate brand strategist who is dedicated to helping entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders in the wealth management space define and execute brand and growth strategies that set them apart and support purposeful, sustained growth. Greg is a frequent presenter at industry events hosted by Family Office Exchange, Family Wealth Alliance, and Worthy Circles. He also serves as an advisory board member to StoryKeep and Tapestry, two specialized providers supporting high net worth families. And he's a longtime judge of the annual Family Wealth Report Awards.
Here are three key money topics Greg hits on in this conversation. First, money can be a glue or a solvent. In Greg's experience, financial decisions have the ability to strengthen family bonds or create lasting rifts. Second, the art of true communication versus just talking. Greg highlights how most people are expert at talking, but terrible at listening and truly hearing what's being communicated. Like other types of conversations, productive money discussions benefit from curiosity. And third, the art of making money conversations real without creating guilt. Greg discusses the delicate challenge of having honest conversations about the intentional financial sacrifices parents make for their children while keeping the focus on understanding and appreciation rather than guilt or a sense of owing something back. Now it's our pleasure to bring you Gregory Roll's Money Tales.
Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cami Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager.
Sandy, we have a big celebration for today.
We do. I'm so excited.
This is our 250th podcast episode of Money Tales.
Can you believe it, Cami? I never imagined when we started this back in 2020 that we'd be doing it 5 years later.
I'd never imagined it either. And I think it just keeps getting better. It's so much fun.
It's really exciting. I don't know that we've talked about our Genesis story on the pod before. When we started out with Money Tales, our plan was to record 9 episodes, make it a series, see how it did, and then maybe come back and make another series. But things changed right away.
It really did, Sandy. I remember it was episode 3. I think we both looked at each other and said, oh yeah, this is going to keep going on. And then the feedback has been so special and people really saying that it's impacting them in a way that's very meaningful to us.
It is. And not only from listeners, but from guests as well. A lot of guests, when we're finished recording, will tell us how meaningful the conversation was and how the conversation brought up things that they hadn't really ever given thought to or hadn't given thought to those items in a while. And isn't it special that all these 250 guests have been sharing their life stories for the betterment of the rest of us so we can learn and grow and be inspired to have money conversations?
I always laugh when someone asks, tell me a favorite one. And we both go, that's like choosing your favorite child. They're all my favorite, all 250 of them.
Isn't it amazing? We could go back to episodes that we did 4 or 5 years ago, and I still remember key moments and key impacts. Money conversations are really powerful on behalf of not only today's guests, but all of our guests, I want to express a lot of gratitude and thanks for them being vulnerable to show up, to share their life's money stories with us, for not only our listeners, but for their networks as well.
Sandy, what a great opportunity to turn to Mr. 250. Welcome, Greg Roll, to the Money Tales podcast.
Thank you. And congratulations to both of you. That's quite a milestone.
It is. It's really exciting. Greg, why don't you kick things off and share a little bit about yourself, and in that, a couple pivotal moments that really impacted who you are today.
Growing up, we didn't come from a lot. What we did have an abundance of was love and very tight family unit. So it's my parents and my brother and me. A first defining moment related to money. I was getting ready to apply to college, and there's 3 years that separate my brother and me. I'm the eldest brother. My parents sat down with both of us. And again, keep in mind, up until this point, we never really discussed money. While we didn't want for stuff, we did have a sense relative to other families and friends where we kind of fell in the stratus sort of thing. And they opened up their checkbook. They said, hey, we can only afford to send one of you to college. So we're not going to send either of you to college, that you'll both have to go and earn scholarships, and that we will help you along the way if we can, but that we're not going to choose between you. So emotional, and kind of got our marching orders. The outcome of that is I got full scholarship to the school I went to. My brother, 3 years later, got full scholarship to the school that he went to. But the story gets more complex around that. It's interesting because looking back when I was much older, I realized how money becomes a glue or a solvent to a family unit. Binding it together or breaking those family bonds apart. So for me, when my parents did that and shared that, I took that as positive and, to me, liberating. It launched me on this idea of independence and taking ownership and responsibility for my life. But I brought to it, I guess, a mindset of abundance. There's no judgment between the two, mindset of abundance and a mindset of scarcity. But my brother had and has a mindset of scarcity. He did not bring that same view of the conversation to things. So I got into college, full scholarship. As a result of the situation, put myself through school in terms of getting jobs. So it started off very early. I felt empowered. When my brother applied for school, I turned to both him and my parents and said, hey, look, I'm set. So you had enough money for one of us, and I'm totally fine if you applied those funds to him. Lessen the burden on him, and I love him, and let's do this.
What a great big brother.
Well, thank you. And they said no. They said that the social contract that we had made, and we all committed to this, and so we're not going to revisit and renegotiate and reallocate. And so what was set was set. And so my brother, while he got full scholarship to the school he ended up going to, and he was going to be an engineer, he got a partial scholarship to his dream school. Again, we sat down and I was like, look, he got most of it, not all of it. Use some of those funds to help him. And again, they said no. Resentment with him took root. To this day, I have a very close, loving relationship with my mom. To be fair, she's getting a little challenging at times now that she's older. But we're really very close and talk a lot. And I'd like to think I'm a good son in terms of supporting her with the needs that she has. And my brother and my mom have an estranged relationship, and it connects back to that period in time. And I think part of that also, from my parents' perspective, was when my dad and his brother were older, there was a rift in the family around inheritance. And that rift fragmented the family. So up until that point, I had an uncle and I had cousins. And after that point, I didn't have an uncle and I didn't have cousins. And so that break was a complete clean break. So I think my parents didn't want money to become a factor in relationships between brothers when they looked at us. And so my brother and I remain very close and have been very close throughout the years we've shared. At 18, you don't have the wisdom because you don't have the experience, you don't have the perspective, right? But as you go through life and you get older and you gain that distance, and with that distance perspective, I revisit that and other sorts of things with a different lens to it. And so I see how that idea of glue and solvent is really very potent. And now, honestly, with the work that I do with my clients, so I serve multifamily offices and RIAs, or registered investment advisor firms, and common with them, of course, their clients are high net worth and ultra high net worth. And what I've come to see is that obviously, while tiers are very different, when you start to look at things like family dynamics and emotions and conversations that are had or not had, values and things like that, and then also perspectives that differ very dramatically from Gen 1 to Gen 2. So in the case of my family, and again, did not come from money, but using the vernacular of ultra high net worth. So our Gen 1 controlled the money and made decisions on money that impacted Gen 2. And then Gen 2 was put in a position of having to just deal with that. And then it either shapes and empowers or hinders and limits. And again, everything's a choice. So I feel sadness when I think of my brother's choices based on that, but obviously it emotionally impacted him. So that's my share on pivotal moment.
Thank you for that. It's incredible. As we started with you and acknowledging episode 250, we always say everyone's got a money story, and you're bringing that to life. Everybody has a money story, and that's super interesting. So you've got two brothers raised the same way with their family, coming out of a situation differently. Not that everything was the same. Maybe your school, you didn't have a dream school that you were being held back from.
I got into my dream school, and that's why I felt his situation hurt me. I felt bad for him. I love him. And then I also saw a way out. Like, it didn't have to be. And so you start to think about the importance of single decisions setting trajectories, or the choices someone else makes based on the decisions of others, and how that can set someone on a trajectory. It's a lesson in there. And I carry the lesson forward with our kids. So my wife and I, Kate, have two kids. Our son, Nicholas, is 26. We got him the old-fashioned way. Our daughter, who will be turning 22 later this month, we adopted from China. And to me, it's of paramount importance that it's not even what Kate and I think and feel, but that the kids think and feel. That everything will be done to support them individually and then as brother and sister, and reinforce the paths that they're on. Kate, my wife, and I have made sacrifices to ensure that. Because again, the lesson with my parents and my brother and that whole thing, but that really was a defining moment, because I carry that forward as a well that I continue to draw lessons from, if you will. So.
Greg, I'm curious, have you talked with your brother about all of this as adults?
My dad was a man of few words, appreciated kids who were even of fewer words. My mom was the great communicator. For me, my personal interests and passions are around narrative and storytelling, and the work I do is, all of it is people trying to express themselves. It's amazing to me how bad people are at communicating, not talking, but at listening, and then also really hearing what's being communicated and not waiting for their turn to talk, if you will. So feed back into the conversation what the other person is expressing. I try to do that very much so with our family. Ironically, I'll say Kate's a communicator. I'm a communicator. Nicholas turned out to be a communicator. Grant's like Silent Bob. It's so funny. She just is quiet. And I've done a ton of research on that in terms of just quiet people. There's a great book. I think the title of it is simply Quiet. Highly recommend it. Through her, I continue to grow and evolve. Every day there's a lesson learned in terms of how she communicates, which is just differently. But to answer your question with my brother, I don't remember clearly that far back. I'm sure we talked about it, and I'm sure the conversations were probably raw and emotional. But in young adulthood, we did specifically talk about it. When my dad passed, that's a time for introspection and retrospective. People start taking inventory of their memories. So you revisit your respective highlight reels. And so we talked about it. It's interesting because it scarred him, and it's something that he just doesn't have want or need to revisit. To him, there has been closure. Fortunately, it's manifesting itself in the way it has. I want to choose my words carefully because initially I was going to say it in a strange way, but that's because that's my perspective. From his perspective, there's nothing strange about it at all. He appreciates everything that I tried to do. History is an interesting thing, as is memory, right? It's constantly being reworked and remastered and changed. But through the years, he and I both remember things in very same or similar ways. So our history is aligned. Our relationship is.
That's what's striking about your story. Best of intentions. Your folks were trying to make sure this brother relationship stayed strong because it had broken with your dad and his brother. And that sounds like that was really critical to them. So fairness was their way of solving whatever happened with your dad's generation. You just talked about your children, and you are very focused on being fair with them. You don't want to create any tension. How do you think about, I guess it's the unforeseen consequences of something you've chosen to do that would impact them in a way that would be surprising?
Your question seems very straightforward, but as I'm processing it, it's actually incredibly nuanced and complex. You're asking me to give an answer to the unseen, which is also then the unknown, which is, I would argue, impossible to do. There's also the idea of the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So I think a lot of times people find themselves in bad situations by surprise or by accident. I'd like to think, right? Like they didn't deliberately engineer something. Kate and I can have ideas and theories. We can have plans, but I think it's of paramount importance as a family to talk about it, to share, hey, here's what mom and I are thinking before something's executed or implemented, and to ask the kids what they think. Or if we're starting to formulate decisions, to talk with each of them individually, because we all understand the downside of groupthink and stuff, or, you're sitting down in a family dynamic and invariably some person talks more than the other, or that starts to take it down a direction that someone else is not necessarily comfortable pulling back from. To having one-off conversations around things, asking them what they think and feel. Growing up, I'll say for both my brother and for me, we weren't asked a lot what we thought and felt about things.
You're so told, it sounds like.
That was also like of a certain time, too. I don't share that as criticism of my parents as much as just observation of the times. Very hierarchical structure, probably rather traditional family growing up that way. But now I see the great importance of, and it's not just with our kids, with all important relationships, to just ask people what they're thinking, what they're feeling, but ask them not to respond to what you're putting out there, like it's a multiple choice test. Have them start with a blank piece of paper and then write down where they're coming from. which I got to tell you is incredibly rewarding because more often than not, I wouldn't have thought the things that they share back. However smart you think you are, you have a limited view of things. To your earlier question of the unseen, how do you go find the unseen? Number one, you need to be open to seeing or hearing. Curiosity, I would say, that is probably, if I were to have a love affair with language and I would have a mistress, curiosity would be that mistress. I think it is such a great, powerful word. Each of us, the kids, Nicholas, Grant, and Kate, we try to bring curiosity to things, like a true openness to inform me, educate me, teach me.
Greg, you're clearly someone who's very thoughtful about the conversations you have with people in your life. And I'm wondering if you would tell us about one of your more difficult money conversations and what made it so.
So I'll say that all conversations around money I find difficult. We're all sort of victims of our past. So I don't have a point of reference. So this is almost like blazing new trails. I also feel like money conversations, when they come up, more often than not, are difficult ones to have with our family. So I didn't want the kids to have debt with their college educations. And so when I say I want to be very clear, everything around money is Kate and me, we're equal partners. And honestly, I'll go a step further and say we're not equal partners. She's the CEO, CFO, COO of our family. I work here. I'm happy to be gainfully employed. My performance reviews seem to be pretty good over the years. So everything is a we, us, and out. So when we sit down, I didn't want the kids coming out with debt. I didn't want their introduction to adulthood to be those sorts of burdens. So we took on that debt. So it's not like it goes away. So that decision to help them, in my mind and Kate's mind, is within the context of sacrifice, burden and sacrifice. So those conversations then with the kids are challenging or emotionally charged because they need to understand the context for that sacrifice is made so that they can do something differently than we did. A great passion of a parent is to be able to do more for your kids than you had and to hope that their life is better than yours is. We can all buy into that as a beautiful ideal in theory, but the execution of that, some families that's easier to do than with others. And with ours, it's a little challenging to do at times, and especially with the two kids and the schools they went to, the scholarships that they did or didn't get, and all the rest of it. And so we talked to them then about responsibility. They need to be understanding of something so that they can be appreciative of something. I think that's very important. I want to be clear on this. The word sacrifice isn't meant to be connected to ideals of guilt or burden or a different type of debt or owing. But I think it's important to be real. And I think conversations around money are critically important to be real, because I also think that in being direct on it, you can have a deeper conversation, which is not about money.
It's about values.
It's about family values, or it's about, hey, what sort of student are you going to be at school? What sort of responsibilities do you have? To me, think of like overlapping circles of which money occupies one of those rings, but you should really ultimately be talking about whatever's at the center of where those things intersect. In the case of what we're talking about, school, responsibility, family values, the importance of just education. That's how I look at money conversations.
So, Greg, I'm inviting your mistress curiosity into the conversation. You started out by saying you find money conversations difficult. And then you brought to life that it's really life conversations where money's some aspect, but it's not the bullseye of the conversation. Help me understand. You don't strike me as someone who would have any difficulty in having conversations about life and family values. So let's tease out, where is the difficulty to you?
So the difficulty on the money side is from where I come from. You'll sit down and you'll listen to people talk who came from the Depression era. And now maybe they're living in a wonderful house and they have multi-generations and everyone's playing down by the lake and everything's wonderful. And they're still rolling up aluminum foil into a little ball to then eat because you just never know. To your question about overall conversations, I'm very comfortable having. But then when you really zero in on the money part of it, I feel like there are these deep-seated emotional triggers for me. There are obligations. Am I able to meet those obligations? Then based on that, questions of success. I don't define myself by those things, but yeah, it's part of the conversation. I also need to be very careful because that's me. And you're sitting down with other people who obviously aren't you, but they also don't have your perspective. They don't have all these things. So you have to, in my opinion, be very, very careful not to then have these emotional overlays, subtle or not so subtle. People are all sensitive. You pick up on the vibes of things. Hey, the conversation is cool, but Dad seems stressed. Why is that?
I'm curious how you are finding this conversation that you're in with us.
I'm finding this challenging. I'm enjoying it. I find it thought-provoking. But at the same time, I feel like it's a little bit of therapy almost, where it's like, so talk to us about the relationship you had with your mother. In a way, we are. So talk to us about your relationship with money. The society we live in, obviously capitalist society, increasingly it seems to be supercharged on focusing on wealth and consumption and acquisition. And at the same time, there's the, I would say, more important but far softer conversation on values and priorities and future and all of these things that are, I think, on a daily basis in conflict, whether we're talking about it or not. And here I'll go over my skis, but this is my opinion, that most people are in conflict with money, depending upon how money interacts or they interact with it, or it impacts their relationships or their views on things. Conflict doesn't have to be extreme. It could be subtle. It could be, gee, I don't have a migraine, but I just have a little bit of a headache behind my eyes. I look at money and talk about money as more often than not being challenging.
You've been real in this conversation, and I, for one, very much appreciate it because you are bringing to life the emotional side of money that many of us do struggle with. And when we talk about it, it normalizes it. What's your next money conversation going to be, and who's it going to be with?
I've had several money conversations with both kids. So our son is 26. He, up until recently, has been a very good customer of Bank of Gas.
I've heard that's a great bank.
It is. The rates are zero. Not only do you get a toaster, but any other appliance you want to do. When he turned 25, we started to talk to him about, hey, go get your own credit card. It's very important because then you start building your credit worthiness and you have had a job long enough and it pays you enough and will help. Use your credit card when you need car repairs up until that point. It was funny because he's always very respectful, but it was fascinating to me to see the immediate reorientation of like an auto repair bill when he and I were talking about it, but I was paying for it. And then he and I are talking about it and now he's paying for it. Talk about real. his world became very real. And so we're always there to help however we can, but you kind of need to go, hey, you're at that stage. Now, what's interesting is our daughter just graduated. She's going to start a job in September. Kate is like, hey, she's going out either in Colorado or California, wherever she's going to be based. And I don't want us paying for all of these things. We need to have that conversation with her. Now I time travel back to my brother and to me, to my parents, and I go, well, she's 21. And we didn't have that conversation with Nicholas until he was 25. When I say money conversations are challenging, we're having a nice conversation, but Kate brought to this conversation, she was coming from a very different place, and she was expecting a very different outcome. And then I was derailing that, I guess, by saying, no, we have to be fair. She needs the same runway that Nicholas had. The next conversation, I've already had the conversation around the kids and money, but with Kate, we have a rule, which is we don't move off topics unless they're 100% closed. And they don't have to be closed in that moment, but we set a reasonable time for when there's closure. There's no digging up dead bodies from the last issue and stuff like that. That is our next, though it was about a week ago, money conversation.
Greg, you are incredible. Before we let you go, would you share with our listeners where's the best place for them to find you?
LinkedIn is perfect. And so it's Gregory Roll on LinkedIn, and my firm name is Touchpoint.
Greg, thanks for sharing your money stories and for being really vulnerable and authentic and connecting with us in a way that is pushing this whole idea of money tales forward, that conversations can be really informative and helpful and insightful. You were incredible.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening, and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Aspiriant. Go to aspiriant.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@aspiriant.com. See you next time.